On July 4th, we celebrate the founding of a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men and all women are created equal and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. We celebrate with barbecue, music, fireworks, and family. But how many of us really take time to remember how we got here and what the men who fought for us from the Revolutionary War forward have endured to ensure that we would have the freedom that we have in this country? From December of 1777 to June of 1778, the winter encampment at Valley Forge was a period of significant hardship for the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. The men at Valley Forge endured numerous deprivations. They faced bitterly cold temperatures, snow, freezing rain. Many lacked adequate winter clothing, shoes, blankets, leaving them vulnerable to frostbite and other cold-related ailments. Many of them didn't have basic shoes. They wrapped their feet in blankets and in towels and in cloth in order to keep them warm enough that they could move. And they had to march like that. Can you imagine what that must have been like for them? The Army there initially had no proper shelter and had to construct log cabins which were cramped, damp, and poorly insulated. That led to significant discomfort and health issues. They experienced severe food shortages. Provisions were scarce, and when they were available, they were often of very poor quality. The soldiers subsisted on meager rations of bread, meat, and occasionally fire cake, which was a crude mixture of flour and water. They suffered from disease because of poor nutrition, exposure to the elements, unsanitary conditions. There was dysentery and typhoid and pneumonia. Those were rampant, and they claimed many lives. The lack of adequate food resulted in malnutrition, weakening the soldiers and making them more susceptible to illness. As I said before, they had inadequate clothing. They lacked proper uniforms and shoes. It was common to see ragged clothes and bare feet, even in harsh winter conditions. They had insufficient supplies. They had low morale. The harsh conditions, combined with the lack of food and clothing, took a huge toll on their morale. Desertions were common, and maintaining discipline and motivation was a constant challenge for the commanders. The soldiers were far away from home and their families, and that added to their strain. In spite of all this, they had to undergo crucial training under Baron von Steuben. He implemented a rigorous training program that, in the end, significantly improved the discipline and effectiveness of the Continental Army. Despite those deprivations, the time at Valley Forge was a turning point for the Continental Army and for the Revolution. The training and the reforms implemented during that period greatly improved their capabilities, which contributed to the eventual success in the war. Like American soldiers for the last 200 years, they adapted to conditions and they overcame them. Through the years, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines have endured much for our freedom. I graduated from high school in the Philippines, and I can tell you that few people there and few people here remember and understand what happened there in 1942. The Bataan Death March was a brutal forced transfer of American and Filipino prisoners of war by the Japanese Imperial Army in April of 1942. This after those soldiers had fought a delaying action and a retreat for many months after the invasion of the Philippines in December of the prior year. The march occurred after the soldiers were ordered to surrender the Bataan Peninsula to the Japanese, and they were subjected to horrific conditions and inhumane treatment. Approximately 75,000 Filipino and American troops were taken prisoner. The Japanese soldiers confiscated their weapons and supplies, often violently. Many prisoners were beaten, bayoneted, or killed outright if they showed any sign of resistance or were unable to keep up. The march began at Mariveles on the southern tip of the Bataan Peninsula and ended at Camp O'Donnell, approximately 65 miles away. The prisoners were forced to march in the sweltering heat of the Philippine summer, with temperatures often exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can guarantee you, having lived in the Philippines for 3 years, anytime the temperature got up over 90 degrees, the temperature and the humidity together were almost unbearable. Japanese guards beat the prisoners with rifle butts, bamboo sticks, and bayonets. Those who fell behind or could not keep up were often executed on the spot. Some POWs were bayoneted for attempting to drink from roadside puddles, and prisoners were given little or no food. Wounded and sick prisoners received no medical attention, and many died from untreated injuries or illnesses. POWs were forced to march for hours on end with little or no rest. And like I said, those who collapsed from exhaustion were either beaten or killed. The lack of sanitation and the grueling conditions led to the rapid spread of diseases like dysentery, malaria, and beriberi. And the Philippine national bird is the mosquito. And I guarantee you there was dengue fever all through the ranks. Dengue fever produces what's called a bone break headache. In other words, it feels like your skull has broken. It hurts so bad. Prisoners witnessed the brutal killing of their comrades, caused severe psychological trauma. The harsh conditions and relentless brutality led many to despair, with some prisoners choosing death over continued suffering. It's estimated that between 5,000 to 10,000 Filipino and 600 to 650 American prisoners died during that march. And those who survived the march arrived at Camp O'Donnell, where conditions were really no better. They remained dire. The camp was overcrowded, prisoners continued to suffer from lack of food, water, and medical care, and many POWs died shortly after arriving because of the effects of the march. But the Bataan Death March remains a stark reminder of the enduring spirit of those soldiers who survived it. This July 4th, before you fire up the barbecue grill, turn on the music, or crack open a cold one, stop for a moment and think about what motivated the men at Valley Forge and what kept the Bataan prisoners alive. The idea of freedom. Embrace that vision. And remember, when we have disagreements of a political nature, it doesn't change the fact that we're all Americans and we all need each other. I want to thank each and every one of my subscribers and my viewers who have made such a huge impact on my life and also on the channel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Spread this message. Talk to people. Remind everyone we're all Americans. I love you guys. The Beach will be back next time.